Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you, Wayne? Shoot, something happened here. Oh, darn it. I have to get out and come in again.
Okay.
Good morning again.
Good morning again.
Commissioner.
Wall's here. Do we have Commissioner Maestas yet?
I saw him in the building earlier, so he's here.
I'm sure he's there. There we go. Good morning, Commissioner Maestas.
Good morning. We're getting the hearing.
You're on your phone.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? This is Commissioner Maestas.
Good morning, Commissioner. I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Is Chairman Fishman going to chair this meeting?
No, he is not. I got an email back from him this morning saying that he's gone this week, not next week. So you are chairing it as far as I know. Are you able to, or would you like me to? Or someone? I don't see why you can't. We can hear you. Commissioner Maestas, can you hear me?
No.
No?
I think Miguel and Phil might be helping him get set up.
Okay. I think we should wait a little bit.
Okay.
Maybe five minutes or something.
Yeah, Commissioner Byrd is having some trouble connecting as well.
Okay. Let's just chill out for a minute.
Okay.
Okay. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
We can
Okay.
hear you.
Well, are all commissioners on yet? Let me just call this meeting to order. Mike Smith, are you there? Anyone
Yes,
from
I am.
OTC? Okay.
I am here.
Please do the roll call.
Commissioner Byrd. I'm sorry, he's actually still trying to connect. Commissioner Hall.
Here.
Commissioner Fishman is absent. Commissioner Maestas.
Here.
And Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Here.
Commissioner, we have 3 commissioners present. That's a quorum, and the commission can hold its open meeting.
Thank you, Mike. Commissioner Hall, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and
Certainly.
the state pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Thank you, Commissioner Hall. All right, members of the commission, you have the agenda before you. Are there any changes or modifications? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve as presented.
Mr. Chair, hearing no other motions, I would like to move to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor
Second.
by Commissioner Hall, a second by Commissioner Vicente Aguilar. Any discussion on the motion? Mike Smith, take the vote, please. Mike Smith, we had a motion and a second on the floor with no discussion regarding approval of the agenda. Can you take the vote?
I'm sorry, I had my mute on. Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas,
Aye.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Aye.
And I don't know if Commissioner Byrd is present. Commissioner Byrd?
I think he's still having trouble connecting.
Okay, the agenda is approved by a vote of 3-0.
Thank you, Mike. Are there any special guests or any individuals that wish to make public comment?
Mr. Chair, this is Sarah. We don't have any special guests, but we do have some public comments.
Okay, before you, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Make sure they state their name and any affiliation. And is
Okay.
there a time limit, Sarah, on public comment?
Yes, public comment should be limited to 3 minutes each, and we have 3 public commenters. The first on the list is New Mexico State Representative Tara Lujan. Representative Lujan, are you with us?
Yes, can I pass to the next person and come after? I'm currently driving and I need to park.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely. The next on the list is Ms. Margaret Bell. Ms. Bell, are you with us?
I am. Good morning. Margaret Bell from Albuquerque. Appreciate the opportunity to speak this morning. First of all, I'd like to say I support the SPS plan and ask that the PRC approve it. However, with one exception, I understand that the hearing examiner recommended credit card readers on the charging stations, which is excellent. That's what we need so that they are easy to use and convenient for us. However, I understand that the recommendation was for the contactless readers only, and that's really not convenient for all of us because we don't all have those credit cards with the tap technology. And you know, the grocery stores and Walmart and all those stores now have the credit card readers with the contactless technology, but they still have the technology to read chips and let you swipe your card. Because the last thing any of us would want would be ready to check out for our groceries and find that our credit card didn't work because it only could take, you know, the tap technology. So we don't want our charging stations to be like that. We don't want somebody to be driving an electric vehicle and not have the convenience of using whatever type of credit card they have to charge their vehicle. So I am asking that you do add a requirement for the credit card reader to also read chips and be able to swipe the cards. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Mr. Chair, this is Representative Lujan. I can comment now if that's okay.
Absolutely, and welcome to our weekly Public Regulation Commission meeting, Madam Representative, and thank you for your service, and please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members, and all those attending publicly. I'd like to just reiterate what was just said and say this: I support these measures, but I would like to see something done or added to make sure that the public is accommodated through the credit card readers on the chargers. So that's just where I'm at. I've been working across the state and talking to the public and to understand the needs and understand what we're doing with the EV and mapping and so forth. It's a lot of work. We have a lot still to do, but I would like to say that is one aspect of what we're discussing today that I'd like to support, and making sure that we have the credit card access and the credit card readers accessible to our public. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Representative Lujan. Please come back and see us again.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, and thank you for all your work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you very much.
Okay,
Sarah?
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, the last person we have for public comment is Ken Hughes. Mr. Hughes, are you online?
Yes, and good morning. Thank you for
Good morning, Ken.
allowing me to comment. Good morning, Commissioner Maestas. And I'm with the Sierra Club Rio Grande chapter, the transportation chair. Just want to echo what Representative Lujan and Margaret Bell mentioned about the credit cards availability. Last week, I pulled into one of the 60 electric charging stations in Santa Fe to charge up my little smart car using my charge point fob, and tried to swipe it and it didn't work. So then I tried to use my phone and there wasn't service. So the high-tech route didn't really work at that point. So it's just an example of why we need to have as a backup the use of credit cards, not just the newest and greatest technologies. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's all of the public comments that we have for today.
Thank you, Sarah. In moving on, we're on to item number 6, presentation and potential discussion items. We have our senior hearing examiner, Ashley Schanauer, who's going to present his recommended decision in case 20-00150-UT in the matter of the Southwestern Public Service Company's application for approval of its 2021-2023 Transportation Electrification Plan, proposed plan riders and credit, and other associated relief. Ashley, please proceed.
Yes. Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. I'd like to try and share my screen here to share the, oh, here we go. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, good morning. This is the SPS Transportation Electrification Plan. It's actually not been a controversial case. Are you seeing the recommended decision, or are you seeing something else?
We see a file directory.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go back here. All it wants to do is show you my file directory.
Actually, now we see it starts a briefing order was issued by a hearing examiner.
Oh, you're seeing that now?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, good. All right. Yeah, well, I wanted to start with the summary. I wanted to go through the summary. This has not really been a controversial case. There were a lot of issues in the case, but I think I and the parties generally characterize them as being relatively minor issues. But there were a lot of issues, and so it led to a recommended decision that's about 100 pages long. And I think what I'd like to point out first before I even get into the summary is that the commission has a lot of flexibility on these issues. The statute is very general. It gives flexibility to the utilities and how they design their programs, and a lot of the decisions that the commission makes on these programs are really going to be policy decisions as you go forward. There's not a lot of legal issues here. So keep that in mind as I go through this summary. And I'll also feel free to ask questions as we go through it, because this is the first of the three transportation electrification plan cases that the commission has ever looked at. So there may be questions, and likely will be questions, and so feel free to ask them. And one of the reasons I'm going through so much detail in this summary is because it is the first time. It is the first plan that you've all looked at, and so it's important, I think, to get an understanding of what these plans are. So anyway, we're starting on this page. It's page 8 of the recommend decision. And if you're looking at the PDF version, it's page 13 of that, but the page 8 is at the bottom of the document. So anyway, starting with the statute, House Bill 521 was enacted in the 2019 legislative session, and it requires public utilities to file plans with the commission by January 1, 2021 to expand transportation electrification. And the act defines transportation electrification as the use of electricity from external sources to power all or part of passenger vehicles, trucks, buses, trains, boats, or other equipment that transport goods or people. And subsequent plans are to be filed upon request by the commission, but not more frequently than every 2 years. Plans may include investments or incentives to facilitate the deployment of charging infrastructure and associated electrical equipment that support transportation electrification, including the electrification of public transit and publicly owned vehicle fleets. Plans may include rate designs and programs that encourage charging that supports the operation of the electric grid. Plans may also include customer education and outreach programs. The statute also allows a public utility to recover its reasonable costs through a commission-approved tariff rider, through base rates, or both. And then we go on to SPS's programs. SPS's plan includes 4 portfolios of programs: residential, public fast charging, advisory services, and program evaluation and reporting. And there are a few programs included in the residential program. The first is the home wiring rebate. The electric vehicle market today consists primarily of residential EV drivers, with 80% of EV charging currently occurring at home. The home wiring rebate program subsidizes the upfront costs for premises wiring for the 240 volt circuit required for level 2 charging equipment. Level 2 charging equipment enables charging at a rate faster than a typical home electrical outlet, which is considered level 1, but still less than at public direct current fast charging stations, which are referred to as DC-FC or level 3. The wiring installations for level 2 charging typically cost between $500 to $800, but in some cases more than $2,000. And the SPS program provides a one-time wiring rebate per house up to $500 to help offset this cost. Customers must enroll and participate in SPS's EV optimization program and or SPS's residential time of use rate.
Ashley?
Yes.
So the 240 volt, just so that folks know, as I understand, that is the same voltage wiring for a conventional electric dryer, correct?
Right, yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Sure. No, that's good question. Yeah, all these terms are new, I'm sure, to most people. They were certainly new to me when I first got involved in this case. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out. The second part of the residential program is the low income charging rebate. SPS is proposing a larger home wiring rebate of up to $1,300 for low-income customers for the 240-volt circuit, and would also allow the rebate to be applied to upgrades to the customer's service panel and the cost of charging equipment. And the charging equipment generally runs about, the mid $500, $600. There's some expensive ones, maybe they go for $700. And then there's some relatively inexpensive ones that go for maybe $200 to $300, but those do not include, they're not networked. They don't transmit the data through the internet to the company. So the normal charger would probably cost around $530 to $600. Home charging service. This SPS is proposing an option that would provide level 2 charging equipment to customers at a $12 monthly rate instead of requiring the customer to bear the full upfront costs. EV optimization. EV optimization program encourages customers to charge during off-peak hours. SPS will offer at least 2 schedule options to allow customers that charge during the day and night to participate. The options will avoid SPS's summer system peak, will prioritize hours that tend to have low power production costs and or include a high proportion of renewable energy. And they will stagger the start times to help avoid a sharp increase in electricity demand that could occur if the charging of many vehicles starts at the same time. Then we go on to what's called the public fast charging programs. These are chargers that are installed outside the home. SPS's public charging program is intended to help address the current public charging infrastructure gap in its service territory. Although 80% of charging takes place at home, the fear that an EV driver might not be able to find a public charging station when needed outside the home, the term called range anxiety, is a major obstacle to the development of the EV market. The public charging program includes make-ready infrastructure for public charging stations owned and operated by site hosts to help lower the upfront costs of charging stations owned and operated by the site hosts and developers. It also includes funds for the installation and operation of charging stations owned by SPS. The plan is for SPS to initially solicit interest in the Make Ready program, and after a year or so, when they see what gaps remain, they intend to install their own stations where it makes sense. The third program is titled Advisory Services. The Advisory Services program provides information addressing the following barriers to EV adoption. And these are barriers as described by SPS. The first one is the lack of awareness of EV benefits. They point out that in surveys, 68% of consumers say they have no experience with EVs. The second barrier is lack of familiarity and perceived risks with the technology. Even with auto dealerships and fleet managers, there are concerns that electric vehicles are challenging to operate and that it is not easy for drivers to understand their lower operating costs. The third obstacle is a misunderstanding of rates and charging choices. Consumers often need help understanding and navigating decisions concerning rate options and charging infrastructure options in both home, public, and commercial contexts. The fourth is access to trusted sources of information. There are conflicting sources of information about EVs in the public domain, and utilities can help provide help to customers to better understand vehicle options and choices. The fourth program is program evaluation, reporting, and stakeholder feedback. SPS's plan includes a process to promote transparency and the sharing of lessons learned to increase adoption. SPS will provide updates on key metrics in an annual TEP compliance report to be filed August 1 of each year. SPS will also hire a third-party evaluator to conduct an interim and final evaluation on metrics such as the customer experience and the impact SPS's programs have had on customer perceptions of electric vehicles. Cost recovery. Of course, all these programs have to be paid for. There are a number of ways that SPS is proposing to recover its costs. The first is through a rider and called the EV rider. SPS is proposing to use an EV rider to recover most of the costs of the TEP. The EV rider would include capital costs and O&M expenses, plus the cost of rebates. SPS asks that the rebates be accounted for as regulatory assets that would be amortized with carrying costs at SPS's weighted average cost of capital over the estimated 10-year useful life of the EV chargers. The costs in the rider would be offset by revenue from SPS provided EV charging equipment for residential customers collected through the proposed EV equipment rider, and from revenue at SPS operated public charging stations collected through the proposed public electric vehicle charging service tariff. SPS estimates that the EV rider would add approximately 11 cents to a 750 kilowatt hour year-round average monthly residential bill, or about 0.1%. SPS proposed that the EV rider would be charged only to secondary voltage customer classes, which includes residential customers. SPS proposes to exclude primary and transmission voltage customer classes and street lighting customers. And as I'll note later, that will be, that I'm recommending that be changed to include charges to all SPS customers, which would reduce that monthly rate by about a half. It reduced the increase by about half. Residential home charging. SPS is not proposing a new rate for charging EVs at residential customers' homes. A residential customer can continue to take service under the standard residential rate or residential heating service rate, or convert to the time of use rate option that is offered for each of its rates. EV equipment rider. This is the home charging service. SPS proposes a monthly charge of $12 to residential customers who use charging equipment to be provided, installed, and maintained by SPS. The charge is based upon the levelized return on SPS's average investment over the course of the expected 10-year useful life of the charging equipment, plus annual depreciation and expected maintenance costs. Then we get to the public electric vehicle charging service rate. These are the rates that SPS would charge at its own charging stations. SPS originally proposed a per minute charge instead of a per kilowatt hour charge for the sale of its electricity at its owned and operated charging stations. It proposed an off-peak charge of $1.05 per minute originally, and $2.10 per minute during on-peak hours. But in response to criticisms by other parties, it agreed to a per kilowatt hour charge. And then we have charging rates at charging stations not operated by SPS. SPS proposes to allow unregulated commercial interests to charge the public more or less than the regulated rates at SPS operated charging stations. SPS proposes to charge the commercial stations the applicable rate for a commercial customer with a 50 kilowatt or higher charger, secondary general service rates resulting from the recently concluded SPS rate case. The 2019 case averaged about 8 cents per kilowatt hour, including fuel and base rate charges for that case. My recommendations, I recommend that the commission approve the company's plan with several modifications proposed by the parties. The commission has not yet adopted rules to implement the statute to clarify the details on its interpretation and how it should be applied. The absence of rules, however, should not prevent the commission from approving the SPS plan at this time. None of the parties has argued that SPS's plan fails to substantially satisfy the standards in the EV statute in a major way and should therefore be rejected. Primarily, they agree that the plan incentivizes charging in off-peak hours, which improves electrical system efficiency and system utilization during off-peak hours. They recommend modifications to the company's proposed programs, but they do not argue that the plan fails to satisfy the EV statute's requirements. They agree that the reduction in air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions resulting from the increased use of EVs is sufficient to outweigh the increased emissions resulting from the use of fossil fuels when energy is not generated by renewable resources. The parties generally argue over a list of what may be properly characterized as implementation details, and most entail policy decisions, not legal decisions. There are no clear answers to be found in the EV statute for these disagreements, and the record reveals how new these programs are and how little evidence is available from other jurisdictions regarding details that have been proven to be effective and successful. Since the programs are new and are being adopted for a service area with little familiarity with EVs, the advertising and outreach portions of the advisory services budget are particularly important. Also, since there is no evidence on how successful the various elements of the programs will be, the data reporting and collection portions of the program evaluation and reporting program will be equally significant. Further, given these uncertainties, I recommend that the approvals granted in this case on many of the disputed issues not be given excessive weight when considering the same issues in future TEP reviews or in any future rulemaking. The evidentiary record in this case is sufficient to approve SPS's plan for the 3-year duration proposed, but the approvals issued in this case should be open for further review in an upcoming rulemaking and in SPS's next TEP filing when further, more reliable evidence may be available. Some of the most notable issues, and finally, some of the most notable issues and recommended changes include the following. Increased rebates for home wiring. These are changes to the plan that I just described. Increased rebates for home wiring for non-low income and low income customers to cover the costs of chargers and electrical panel upgrades. Provide customers with options to take ownership of SPS provided home charging stations early and after 10 years of monthly payments. Require that 20% of the advisory services budget target low-income customers. Add a make-ready infrastructure program for level 2 charging. Determine that the commission has the authority to approve contract terms between SPS and privately operated charging station site hosts that receive make-ready infrastructure funded by the TEP. Require credit card readers for charging stations funded under the TEP's make-ready infrastructure program. Approve per kilowatt hour rates instead of per minute rates for SPS-owned charging stations. Provide for the recovery of the TEP rebates through a regulatory asset amortized over 10 years, and provide for the recovery of TEP costs more broadly from all SPS customers instead of the secondary general service customers as was proposed by the company, and approve a TEP duration of 3 years starting in 2022. So it'll be 2022, 2023, and 2024 with annual performance reports. That essentially, that is my summary of the recommended decision, and I'll be happy to take any questions. In terms, well, bring this up right away before, prior to my presentation, the commenters mentioned their interest in having this commission require a certain type of credit card reader. And just to clarify what happened at the hearing on that point, that was not an issue in this hearing. None of the parties requested a certain type of credit card reader. The testimony, the evidence in this case all dealt with the issue of whether a credit card reader should be required or not. I don't think SPSE actually had a proposal on that originally, and I might be wrong. I have to go look in here, but the proposal came from the low-income interests proposed that there be a credit card reader requirement, and that was opposed by ChargePoint, which is one of the charging station manufacturers. But it seemed during the course of the hearing that a requirement to have a credit card reader of some kind was seemed to be acceptable to all the parties. ChargePoint has its legal position that the commission lacks the authority to dictate the terms on which providers like itself, charging equipment owners and site hosts charge the public and interact with the public for the charging stations, and that was one of the big issues that we dealt with, and I'm recommending that the commission determine that it does have that authority, but beyond that dispute, it seemed that ChargePoint was fine with a requirement that some sort of credit card reader be required if we decided that we had the authority to actually make that determination. So anyway, that's what resulted in this recommended decision, is that there is a recommendation that credit card readers be required on these public charging stations, but the recommended decision does not go further to actually prescribe a certain kind, in part because no one really raised that issue in this case. I understand it was an issue in the P&M and EPE cases, but didn't really have that testimony in this case. So anyway, that's about all as a summary. Be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Ashley. Before we open up the floor to any questions from commissioners, I'd like Mike Smith to maybe give us any parameters surrounding the scope of our discussion. Obviously, this is a bit different from other presentations on recommended decisions. We typically have a draft order to consider and act on, but we don't. This is a discussion item. So Mike Smith, do you have any direction for us before we open up the floor?
Mr. Chairman, I think you can treat this like a presentation of any recommended decision. The parameters surrounding the commission's decision, of course, like any other litigated case, any adjudicated case, are that the commission's decision should be based on the evidence that was adduced at the hearing, and that's essentially what the hearing examiner is here to discuss with you. Okay, thank you, Mike. And we've been joined by Commissioner Byrd,
Commissioner Byrd, welcome. So the floor is open. Do any commissioners have any questions for Ashley regarding his presentation on this recommended decision?
Chair. Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I had one question.
Commissioner Hall, proceed.
So I think my understanding is right, but I just want to confirm with Ashley, is the only way residential users can get a home charger is through through purchasing it from SPP, or can they buy it on their own? The charging station that they attach to.
I'm sorry.
Just the charging station that they use at home. If they attach like a fast charger to their garage wall or something, rather than just using the 240 kV line that they may have in their home, they can do I think a level 3 charger. Is there any provision for that by the utility, or is the only way one can connect their vehicle to their home is through SPS?
There's 3 ways to connect your vehicle at your home, if you own a home. And that's one of the issues. I mean, a lot of people don't own their homes. A lot of people live in apartment buildings. And that's one of the reasons for this additional Make Ready program that SPS is agreeing to do. But if you're going to be connecting at your home, there's the level 1 connection, which is just plugging your charger, your car
Right.
Into the regular outlet.
Right.
Level 2 charger, you can either pay SPS $12 a month to take care of that. They'll install it and maintain it, or you can buy your own and install it on your own. Get an electrician to.
Okay.
I mean, I think you're going to need most people. You'll need a separate outlet. I don't think you can use your dryer outlet for it. You need a separate outlet in your garage, and so you'd have to pay for that installation.
Right.
If you're going to go to a level 3, I have not heard that anyone that any residential user is even capable of handling a level 3 direct current fast charger in their home. My understanding, and no one in the case has discussed that or proposed that. The level 3 chargers are the ones that get installed outside the home, and they're intended to do a really fast charge. That the charges that you would do even with a level 2 take time. It's I think estimated is that they try to look at how much mileage a typical residential customer will do in a day, and they say it's generally 32 to 37 miles is what they estimate. A level 2 charger will still take about an hour and a half to 2.5 hours to charge. So it takes some time. The level 3 charger does it more quickly, but that's a lot of power. And I don't know that, I hadn't heard, and it wasn't discussed in the hearing at all, that any residential user would undertake something like that.
Okay. Well, thank you. But I think I heard you say that if you own your home, a homeowner can purchase their own level 2 charger, right?
Yes, they can.
Okay. Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. I was just curious about that point. But otherwise, I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Hall. Any other questions for Ashley? Commissioner Byrd, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, come on.
No
I don't.
questions.
No.
Thank you, Commissioner Byrd. Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, anything to add?
No questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Ashley. I guess, from my perspective, it's no secret that, transportation is the number one source of greenhouse gas emissions. And the implementation of transportation electrification is still at its early stages all across the country. And I'm really glad to see the state of New Mexico launching this. It's not called a pilot, but I think the way it's structured is a pilot. My hope is, and of course, the statute, as you summarize, in your recommended decision, applies only to investor-owned utility electric companies. But my hope is that, perhaps rural electric co-ops that are not subject to this statute will begin coordinating with the investor-owned utilities, especially those co-ops whose service areas are adjacent to the investor-owned utility service areas. Also, this statute, unlike the community solar statute, does not have a specific set aside for low to moderate income communities. It mandates consideration. And so I'm glad to see that there is a specific set aside in it, I believe, in advisory services in your recommended decision for low to moderate income communities. Myself, as a transportation planner, I would prefer to see a more comprehensive socioeconomic forecast within these investor-owned utility service areas to see where these low to moderate income populations are and relative to the existing transportation system for the purposes of planning the location of transportation infrastructure, charging stations, doing a gap analysis. And so I'd like to see that evolve, as these plans become much more mature. And I guess we had Representative Tara Lujan on. I think she signed off, but in one of the more recent legislative sessions, the state legislature almost passed an EV purchase rebate. As I understand it, Xcel Energy in Colorado, I think, is the only IOU that offers a rebate for EV purchase. And it's my hope as a member of this commission that our state legislature will once again take that up and get that passed, because I see that as I think the number one barrier to EV ownership. And so that's kind of all I had to say. Are there any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Hall.
since you're mentioning it, I also want to state that I very much appreciate Ashley's recommended changes for the future. I think they're all very good. I wouldn't mind seeing some occur sooner than the future, honestly. But they're very constructive. And I do think we need to take pay close attention to what we can do to help low and moderate income adoption as well. And I think I wholeheartedly support the idea of an EV rebate. I hadn't heard about that, but I think that's something I'd really like to see come back before the legislature, because, even though you can buy a used EV, a good used EV on the market now, they're still priced higher than certainly low incomes and maybe moderate incomes too. So in any case, a rebate like that would go far to increasing the adoption of EVs. So that's pretty much all I had to say, but if there's no other, we don't have a motion before us, so I'll stop there.
Thanks, Commissioner Hall. And I guess in closing, I'd like to thank Southwestern Public Service for being the first to submit their transportation electrification plan. And it's admirable because their customer base is, the majority of it is, commercial industrial, which is just the opposite of the other two investor-owned utilities. So my hat's off to them for doing this. And I think we're all going to learn through this process as the implementation of these plans, starts occurring. And I think, Ashley, I think you're right. We do need to maybe revisit these when we initiate the rulemaking. I don't have a specific timeline, but I would think the best time to initiate the rulemaking is after our commission takes action on all three transportation electrification plans. So I think we definitely need to get that going. Ashley, do you have any final comments?
No, I just think we're all learning about this, and I think these initial plans will and the results will really help us do something good in the future.
And Ashley, maybe either you or Mike, can you tell us what the next procedural steps are regarding this particular recommended decision?
Well, Mr. Chairman, my understanding is that this is Judy's case, but I understand that she's planning on bringing an order to the commission next week. She can correct me if I'm wrong on the timing of that.
Judy, are you on? Is she on?
Yes, I'm here. Had to unmute myself, Commissioner Maestas. And yes, Commissioner Fishman requested that there be a week between the presentation of the RD and the presentation of the exceptions and the proposed final order. Therefore, I planned on bringing it next week, as well as a discussion of the exceptions.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Thank you, Ashley, and I thank the public commenters. We rarely get public comments that are specific to any agenda item, so that was very helpful. So let's move on to item number 7, consideration and approval of prior minutes, the minutes of the August 25th, 2021 open meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Hall, a second by Commissioner Byrd. Any discussion on the motion? Mike Smith, take the vote.
Commissioner Byrd,
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas,
Aye.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall.
Aye.
Commissioners, the open meeting minutes for August 25th, 2021 are approved by a vote of 4-0.
Thanks, Mike. Let's move on to the consent agenda. Mike, I think, why don't you kind of list all or enumerate all the items on the consent agenda, and then we can entertain a motion to approve.
Commissioners, the consent action items for this meeting are cases, transportation matters, case 21-00210 TRM in the matter of the application of DJ's Transportation LLC for a certificate to provide non-emergency medical transport service. This is a potential order regarding the application for certificate. Case 21-00213 TRM in the matter of the application of Duke C. Rides LLC for a certificate to provide general taxi cab service. This is a potential order appointing hearing examiner. Utility matters are case 21-00129 UT in the matter of the filing of the 2021 annual reports and related FCC filings by eligible telecommunications carriers. This is a potential order regarding staff's report and recommendations. And then case 21-00235 UT in the matter of the State Rural Universal Service Fund 2022 per connection charge and fund size calculation. This is a potential initial order.
Thank you, Mike. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda action items as presented?
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner, second by Commissioner Byrd. Any discussion on the motion? Mike Smith, record the vote.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas,
Aye.
Commissioner Byrd.
Aye.
The consent action items are approved by a vote of 4-0.
Thank you, Mike. Let's move on to the regular action items. Item 9A under transportation matters. Case 18-00374-TR-EN in the matter of the formal complaint of Crystal C. Winters against Superior Ambulance Service, Inc., doing business as Superior Medical Transport and We Care Transportation. We will consider a potential order on staff's corrective action plan and recommendation and We Care's affirmation. Judy Amer, take it away. Are you there, Judy? You might be on mute.
Yes, I apologize. I was on mute. Good morning, Commissioner Maestas and members of the commission.
Good morning.
As Commissioner Maestas stated, this matter comes before you today on the formal complaint of Crystal Winters against Superior Ambulance Service, We Care, Angel Touch, and Caregivers that was filed on December 10th, 2018. And it was amended in February and April of 2019. The recommended decision was issued by hearing examiner Christopher Ryan on June 2nd, 2021. And the commission entered a final order adopting the recommended decision with modifications on June 30th, 2021. I just want to refresh briefly the memory of what the recommended decision that the commission adopted actually recommended. There in section 4, there were non-monetary penalties that were recommended, and policy and what the recommended decision stated was staff, and to a certain degree, the companies agree there are system-wide problems that need to be addressed through the implementation of new policies. These problems exceed just We Care and Superior. Staff noted that it will take time and effort. It only has so many personnel, and there are literally thousands of motor carriers operating in the state and hundreds of drivers who transport non-emergency medical transport patients. So these are reasonable concerns. But the recommendations that the commission adopted were having accurate forms to ensure that there's an accurate record of all transports. This is a problem that was identified to resolve the fact that We Care's drivers were not requiring transport recipients to sign in as soon as they were picked up or dropped off. So trying to improve the reporting of the times when patients were picked up, dropped off, the times that they were required to be there. The second issue that it was of concern and that was adopted by the commission when adopting the RD was regarding rogue drivers. And the recommendation that was adopted by the commission was to develop a policy for identifying what was characterized as rogue drivers and drivers that may not be complying with the safeties and standards. The goal would be to ensure that those type of drivers do not leave one company and then maybe go to the next without anyone knowing that there had been complaints about that particular driver. And the recommendation that the commission adopted was that staff communicate and coordinate with all transport companies to create a database so that problem drivers could be identified. The third issue was that commission staff should receive all complaints. What the RD stated was that all agree that the commission needs to have a meaningful participation in the collection and monitoring of non-emergency transport complaints. That would be the only way to obtain reliable data and track companies' successes or failures. The suggestion was to have transportation division staff to work with companies to develop a mechanism to ensure the commission would receive complaints as well as the company in a timely fashion and in a way that commission could oversee potential company investigation of complaints. And the fourth issue was ensuring that non-emergency transport companies understand the rules about placement of notice that the PRC has authority over those companies and that passengers have the right to file a complaint with the commission. Sometimes it was, We Care apparently is required to show that they are going to permanently secure the notice in all vehicles. Fifth was the drug testing issue, and the commission ordered We Care to revise its drug testing policy and to ensure that it has random testing. So that was a summary of the recommendations from the RD that were adopted by the commission in the final order. The final order required staff to file a corrective action plan within, let's see, I'm looking at the final order. Yes, file a corrective action plan that addresses those 5 issues I just mentioned within 30 days of the order and includes deadlines for completion of tasks. And that also within 30 days of the final order, staff was to file a recommendation stating its opinion whether there should be a separate docket for the regulation of non-emergency medical transport companies. So with that background, I will proceed to tell you what happened subsequently. We Care on July 30th did file an affirmation of compliance with the RD and an affidavit which states that We Care did place notice in all of its vehicles that, and I'll just summarize it, that that they operate pursuant to a PRC authority, and that if you have questions, you can contact management, or if you have problems, you can contact consumer relations at the PRC and with our phone number, and also our CRD complaint email. In addition, We Care's affirmation stated it revised its drug testing policy to ensure that it included random testing, and it described exactly what the random testing involved. We Care requested the commission enter an order finding that they have complied with the final order's requirements. Then also on July 30th, Transportation Division staff filed a proposed corrective action plan and a recommendation in accordance with the final order. I'll go to the recommendation first. Staff recommended that the commission not open a separate inquiry docket for the purpose of studying and overseeing non-emergency medical transport. The basis of this recommendation was stated by staff to be that they are authorized under the law to resolve any problems, and that they do not feel that a separate inquiry docket would promote, correction of any of the issues that I just detailed above. And then they went into their corrective action plan. Their staff's corrective action plan was to require We Care to have a policy of complete transportation verification forms. But they're corrected. I just want to note, because when I get to my recommendations, they did not propose in their corrective action plan any kind of a statewide non-emergency medical transport update of these verification forms. Second, in their corrective action plan, they proposed to ensure the identification of rogue drivers. Staff proposed to actively engage and collaborate with all interested motor carriers in discussions regarding the development of a database that would allow for the monitoring and reporting of rogue drivers, as outlined in the recommended decision. Staff did not know how the monitoring system would be funded. They do not know who would be responsible for ensuring accurate and non-discriminatory reporting. They do not know how personal and confidential information would be protected. They do not know what related processes and consequences would apply to non-compliance of any motor carrier regarding the database. Staff questions whether a database could have any effect on the contract between the motor carriers and the rogue drivers. Staff estimated it would take 6 months to complete the study, assuming adequate staffing resources and collaboration with motor carriers. Next, the corrective action plan proposes that commission staff should receive all complaints, and that staff proposes to collaborate with motor carriers to establish a self-reporting process that allows for timely reporting of all complaints received by carriers, so staff can review them. Staff estimated that they would need an additional staff member, one full-time inspector, and $10,000 in travel expenses. And staff also stated that it would need additional IT resources to implement the receiving of all complaints. Next, the corrective action plan proposed sending a notice to all motor carriers regarding the proper posting of the Consumer Relations Division's phone number, and the fact that the commission retains authority over non-emergency transport motor carriers. Next, the corrective action plan proposed submission of random and drug alcohol testing by WeCare. Again, this portion of the corrective action plan was only directed to WeCare and stated that and acknowledge, I think it acknowledged that WeCare filed its affirmation of its random drug testing policy, but the corrective action plan proposed that WeCare's policy be subject to staff's consent and periodic confirmation that the policy was being adhered to. The proposed order would find that it would adopt staff's recommendation to not open a new docket regarding compliance to NMPRC rules by non-emergency motor carriers because staff's corrective action plan, as modified by this proposed order, should be sufficient to ensure, hopefully, that non-emergency motor carriers comply with the PRC rules. In addition, besides accepting and it modifies and supplements staff's corrective action plan as follows. And again, this is my recommendation, and it's completely up to the commission as to whether or not to just accept staff's corrective action plan or to accept it with my modifications. My first modification would be within 6 months of this order, staff, this is the 6-month timeframe was what staff recommended. Staff shall present a notice of proposed rulemaking to amend the PRC motor carrier rules to provide that all non-emergency motor carriers shall maintain for inspection by the commission accurate verification forms attesting to the time scheduled for pickup of customers, the time arrived at customers' locations, the time the customer was delivered to the medical appointment, the time the customer was picked up from the appointment, and the time the customer was dropped back off at the customer's original home or location. Second modification, within 6 months of this order, staff shall present a petition, including a notice of proposed rulemaking to amend the PRC rules to provide for a definition of road driver and for mandatory reporting of road drivers for inclusion in either a database, or if a database is too expensive, the commission could create a spreadsheet that they perhaps updated quarterly, and that was posted on the website for the public. The notice of proposed rulemaking should include a plan for non-emergency transport motor carriers' discipline of road drivers up to and including termination. Next modification, within 6 months of the order, staff should present a petition, including a notice of proposed rulemaking, to amend the PRC rules to provide for mandatory filing with the Consumer Relations Division and the Transportation Division of all non-emergency motor carriers of any and all complaints from customers received by the non-emergency motor carrier within 3 days of receipt of said complaint. And the last modification is within 6 months of this order, staff should request and receive from all non-emergency motor carriers a copy of their random drug testing policies and procedures. And staff shall file a summary of compliance or non-compliance in this docket with a recommendation on how to proceed if they find that there was not sufficient compliance. And lastly, the proposed order states that staff shall file its approval or disapproval of WeCare's July 30th affirmation in this docket, simply to state whether or not, in their opinion, the filing made by WeCare satisfies the final order's requirements. And with that, I stand for questions. If there are questions that I am unable to answer because they were staff's recommendations, I've requested that the former and present transportation division directors be available, as well as legal counsel.
Thank you, Judy. Any questions for Judy or the immediate past and present transportation director, the Jesse and Jason Montoya?
I have a question,
Commissioner,
Mr. Chairman.
go ahead.
So Judy, I noticed that in your recommendation, section B, you stated that you're recommending that within 6 months of the order that staff shall present a petition, including a NOPR, notice of proposed rulemaking, to amend the motor carrier rules to provide for a definition of rogue driver and for mandatory reporting of such rogue drivers for inclusion in either a database or a spreadsheet. And it should include a plan for discipline of rogue drivers. And I think that's good. But I do notice that staff's comment had been that, or staff's concern was that they didn't know how a monitoring system would be funded, who would be responsible for ensuring accuracy and non-discriminatory reporting. You mentioned that, how personal information would be protected. And oh no, it's this one. They question whether and how such a database legally, and then I think there's a typo here, but I think it means how it could legally ban the contractual employment of certain rogue drivers. Can you just address that staff concern for me? It seems to me that we have plenty of authority to go forward with what you outlined. I just wondered what's the legal concern there?
Commissioner Hall, I too was thinking the same thing, and that was the reason I requested that staff be present. And so I would turn that over to them.
Yeah, this is Brad Foreman. Good morning, commissioners. I can address this. I mean, I think the due process issue is that in identifying and maintaining on behalf of the commission a list of quote unquote rogue drivers, which could be used to prevent those individuals from being employed. I mean, there's the due process question of how to handle or how to address, how would those individuals have a chance to challenge what they're being on that list, and the commission essentially preventing them from being employed. There has to be some sort of function to at least allow them to say, hey, I didn't do this, or this wasn't me, or something along that line. They do have some due process rights in terms of how we handle the names on this list and how that information is used. And that's the concern, at least, that we've identified.
So I guess what I understand from, well, let me speak to Judy. Judy, I guess what we're contemplating, though, is within the 6 months before staff presents a petition, they will have analyzed that issue to determine a way to do it that would protect due process rights? Is that what you were thinking, or?
Yes, Paul, I was thinking that there would be a way to narrowly define the definition of rogue driver so that the rogue driver would have due process rights protected before they ever, for instance, they would have to have been documented health and safety violations and from the company. So I would anticipate it would be a very small list, actually, because it would be narrowly defined and that the rogue driver would have due process rights protected prior to that. And I also anticipated that staff would, within the 6 months, investigate that issue. And when they filed the petition for the proposed rulemaking, research how other states deal with it and come up with a proposal.
Okay. That sounds reasonable to me, Mr. Chair. I mean, we certainly do, in approving any motor carrier, see pictures and lots of information about each driver and their driving record. So in gathering information like that, I don't think there's a problem at all. That's contemplated by our rules. But I understand the concern of staff in creating a list, which if not managed properly, might keep someone on the list longer than they ought to be, for example. I guess that could be one way that it could be a deprivation of due process if a rogue driver had been rehabilitated, for example. But I think I agree with Judy that there should be a way to manage such a list to avoid due process problems. And I think it should be something that should definitely be explored and attempted. And because, the alternative is to have had this case occur with a really egregious treatment of helpless people without any way of trying to prevent that activity again, unless we have some way to at least know where to look. So with that, unless there's any further discussion, I would move the order. I would make a motion to approve the order.
We have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Byrd.
Thank you. I've got another question before I throw a second out there. The staff has estimated that they're going to need additional staff and possibly funds in order to support this order. From what I remember hearing when they were talking about our budget, we don't have any money. Are we going to be able to implement the order as written if we don't have any money to assist in putting this program together?
Directing that to the transportation directors, Commissioner Byrd?
Well, or whoever feels like they know the answer to that.
Okay.
Commissioner Byrd, my only response is that it wouldn't be in this fiscal year that they would be having to receive it. I guess what I'm trying to say is the timeline is in 6 months, there would be a petition. We wouldn't even open up the rulemaking necessarily until next fiscal year. And then we would still have to adopt the rules. So the hope and intention is that by the time the rules get adopted for this increased monitoring and receiving of complaints and investigating complaints from that we would hopefully have additional staff. And that's my only response in terms that it would be basically implementation within next fiscal year.
Mr.
Sure,
Borman,
Bert.
you wanting to answer that?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Byrd. I'm not, first of all, I haven't seen the language of the order, so I don't know exactly what it provides, but at least is what staff has recommended. There'd be a good amount of work that would be done that would still remain within this fiscal year. So that is a concern that we have, and it's a legitimate concern that you raise. I would simply answer that, regardless of funding, we're going to do what we can do. It's kind of what we do all the time, but we're going to try to do as much of this as we can. And certainly, I don't view the petition that Ms. Amer discusses as being, particularly and no more involved than any other case that we work on. But I mean, it will involve some effort, but there's still the remaining issue of gathering all the information and assembling things. And at least without having seen the order, it's not clear to me that a lot of that work that staff has identified in its corrective action plan would simply be deferred until some sort of final order comes out on a rule.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Borman. So question of some food for thought here. We've already submitted our proposed budget, which does not include this potential need for money. So there is a possibility that it could be the next fiscal budget, which would be the 2023 budget, before we get the staff and funding necessary to fully implement whatever we end up deciding. Should we put language in this order that to ensure that in a year and a half, this isn't dropped because we forget it was here? That somehow we put some kind of tracking system in the order.
Yeah.
It's like a compliance issue.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think that's a good thought. We need to be thinking about that process with many orders, if not all orders we issue.
Yeah, we've brought it up before. I just want to make sure that somehow we track what we're trying to do here, and it just doesn't get lost. And 4 or 5 years from now, somebody points out that, hey, you said you were going to do it 3 years ago. So anyway, that's my only suggestion, is that we be aware of the budget constraints that are imposed on us and work from there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Byrd. So is that your second on the motion that's on the floor?
Well, I guess I'm asking if we can do a friendly amendment to include some kind of language.
I would go along with that friendly amendment.
And we can, I'm comfortable leaving Judy up to just put that statement in there that it will be tracked.
Is that enough for you, Judy?
Yes, but would you like staff to do, for instance, quarterly updates on how it's going with the corrective action plan?
Are you asking me or Commissioner Byrd? Jean?
Commissioner Byrd and the commission exactly the mechanism to track a progress.
I think that sounds like a good suggestion, but I defer to Commissioner Byrd's thought.
That it was a suggestion that staff would file quarterly progress reports detailing the progress they've made towards compliance with the corrective action plan as modified by the commission's order, and the barriers perhaps that they are still encountering, something to that effect.
Madam, let me just weigh in on this if I may. We have a time-specific period in this order to initiate the NOPR. What if we did the staff resource needs assessment in conjunction with the NOPR, that would be done at the end? Because at the end, when we get a revised final rule, we might have a better idea in terms of what staff resources would be needed. And so maybe if we can tie this to the rulemaking process, or at least the timeline that coincides with the conclusion of the rulemaking, and require that we do a staff resources assessment for the purposes of budget development, that to me might seem like the appropriate time to do that.
I like that.
A commission as a whole, what I hear is that staff, I'll add language that states that staff will do a resource needs assessment at the time they file the petition for the NOPR, and they will file another resource needs assessment at the end of the rulemaking.
I like that. Commissioners, how do you feel about that?
I think that helps.
I have no objection, Mr. Chair.
So we have a motion on this and a second with a friendly amendment. So I'm not going to ask for a vote on the friendly amendment. Any other discussion on this? Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, do you have any comments or any recommended changes to the proposed order?
I think the friendly amendment is fine with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Byrd, are you okay with that?
I am. Yes, sir.
Okay. I just under discussion, I just have a few things to say. I'm not used to seeing potential global changes to regulation of non-emergency carriers on a specific case. I would have preferred that the order be germane only to We Care and their corrective action plan, but it sounds like this case is a catalyst for reform and increased oversight, particularly with respect to rogue drivers. So, I'm okay with that, but I have a question for Judy. Judy, did we need to include any language on a variance of our current rules for this corrective action plan? And I assume we're consistent with all the statutes that the rules are based on.
Commissioner Maestas, a variance for what provision are you contemplating?
Well, my question is, does this corrective action plan deviate from the current rules?
No, the corrective action plan is consistent with the current rules. And the proposal to make it industry-wide is a proposal to amend the rules so that it would cover all of the carriers. You see, the corrective action plan is limited just to We Care, as you stated, because this is a case involving We Care and it's not an industry-wide case. So industry-wide changes will be made through a rulemaking.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I guess on part F, you referenced this docket. For example, you said within 6 months of the order, staff should request and receive from all non-emergency carriers a copy of their random drug testing policies and procedures and file a summary of compliance or non-compliance in this docket with a recommendation on how to proceed.
And that's awkward, I agree, because staff recommended not opening a separate docket. And therefore, the commission could reject that recommendation and start an industry-wide docket where that filing would be placed and where eventually the petition for the notice of rulemaking would be placed. And so, you know, now that we're discussing it, perhaps that would be a more efficient way to do it and just close this docket after staff files their concurrence with We Care's affirmation. So you bring up a good point.
Personally, I would prefer that only because I'd like to hear from other non-emergency carriers in a separate docket. I realize this calls for a NOPR within 6 months of this order, but it just seems awkward for us to keep this docket open on a specific case.
I hear what you're saying, and I tend to agree with you at this point, that we, closing this docket after We Care's affirmation is confirmed, and then opening a new potential amendments to the motor carrier rules docket, just something as general as that, and allow the non-emergency motor carriers to file their random drug testing in that docket and any comments in that docket.
I would prefer that, but I'm asking my colleagues if that would be an amendment that would be acceptable, and we can have a separate vote on that if you wish, because it is certainly a material change in the recommendations in the proposed order.
Mr. Chair, I see Jason Montoya has become visible, and I believe he must have something to say on this point. So if we could just listen to him before we address that, would that be all right?
Yes, that's fine. Please mute your microphones. Jason Montoya.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Good to see you. I know I'm visible now. Sorry, I haven't really been a ghost, but I'm here. I'm still operating. After today's discussion, I would agree with you, Mr. Chairman. It makes sense that a corrective action plan was filed obviously prior to us having any open discussion like such, and now hearing what the intent and how to proceed, I think staff would agree.
Thank you, Mr. Montoya. Commissioner Hall, did you have anything else? I'd like to hear from my colleagues. I'm happy to make a motion to amend, but but if the maker of the motion and the person that made Commissioner Byrd, if you're amenable to that change to close this docket after staff reviews the July 30th affirmation from We Care, and that we open a new docket with respect to the more global changes that are being proposed.
Mr. Chair, yes, I think that would be a cleaner way to proceed. I think that's a good thing to do. I'm glad you mentioned this.
Yeah, I
Sure.
agree. This is also a good change.
Yeah.
Okay, Judy, do you have the kind of the language in your head? There's no one better than you to hear a discussion and then put it down on paper.
Yes, Commissioner Maestas, I hear that the commission would like to close the docket after staff confirms We Care's affirmation, and would like to open a docket regarding potential amendments to the non-emergency medical transport motor carrier rules, and that further filings would be made in the new docket.
Okay. All right. I'm going to treat that as a friendly amendment as well. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. We've heard all the amendments to the proposed order. Any further discussion? Michael Smith, can you record the vote, please?
Commissioner Maestas,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner Bassetti Aguilar,
Aye.
Commissioner Byrd.
Aye.
Commissioners, the order passes 4-0.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, commissioners. Let's move on to utility matters. Now, we've been at it for almost 2 hours. Would you all like a 10-minute break? 10-minute break. Let's take a 10-minute break. Let's come back at 11:25. 11:25.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Hi. I've just been talking for the past hour. I am done with my portion.
Judy, please mute your mic. All right, everyone, it's 11:25 on the dot. Let's go ahead and resume our meeting. We are, for those just joining, we're under regular action items, part 9 on the agenda. We're moving on to subpart B, utility matters, item number 7. In the case of 19-00248-UT, in the matter of the application of New Mexico Gas Company, Inc. for approval of its 2020 to 2022 energy efficiency program pursuant to the New Mexico Public Utility and Efficient Use of Energy Act. We have Hans on board, and I just wanted to say that we finally have a video feed. It was crashing the Zoom program, so I think we got that figured out. And I had a chance to meet Sarah Valencia in person for the first time. So that was very nice to meet Sarah. She does exist. Anyway, with that, Hans, take it away.
Thank you, Commissioner Maestas. This matter comes before the Commission upon the application for an expedited variance from final order adopting the recommended decision in NMPRC case number 19-248 UT, filed with the Commission by the applicant New Mexico Gas Company. And upon the Commission Utility Division staff's affidavit of Alicia C. Leyba Tercero in response to the Commission's order for staff response filed on September 3rd, 2021. New Mexico Gas Company has requested a variance from the Commission's final order adopting the recommended decision, which was filed on May 20th, 2020, and authorized New Mexico Gas Company to coordinate natural gas energy efficiency services with community service organizations for its income qualified programs for the purpose of reaching out to additional low-income communities to increase involvement in the income qualified program. Staff's affidavit states that staff has reviewed the request by New Mexico Gas Company against the rules mandated by the New Mexico Annotated Code and indicated that New Mexico Gas Company's request and supporting testimony demonstrate that New Mexico Gas Company's request is in compliance and meets the requirements for a variance to be approved by the Commission. Staff indicated that they did not feel that Rule 17.7.28 would apply in this instance, but indicated that even if it were to apply, that New Mexico Gas Company's budget increase is not greater than 10% of the applicable funding required by statute. New Mexico Gas Company anticipates that the targeted outreach from these projects will add approximately $80,000 per year to the budget for the income qualified program, which is well within the 10% variance allowed under Rule 17.7.28. And that the modified budget for New Mexico Gas Company's energy efficiency program costs would remain well below the 5% cap set forth in section 62.17.6A2. And as such, staff has no objection to the variance and recommends granting the requested variance to New Mexico Gas Company. Proposed order has been prepared accordingly, which would grant the variance request by New Mexico Gas Company. With that, I'll stand for any questions, or if I can get a motion to approve the order as presented.
Any questions for Hans, members of the Commission?
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the order.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Hall. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Second.
A second by Commissioners Byrd and Vicente Aguilar. Any discussion on the motion? Michael Smith, please record the vote.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar,
Aye.
Commissioner Byrd,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas.
Aye.
The order passes 4-0.
Thank you, Mike. Let's move on to item B as in boy 8 under general action items, utility matters. This is case 21-00180-UT in the matter of the application of El Paso Electric Company for an accounting order governing the treatment of costs related to joining the Western Energy Imbalance Market. And we will be discussing a potential order regarding their application. Russell Fisk, can you tee this up?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good morning. This is, as Mr. Chairman said, regarding the application of EPE, El Paso Electric Company, for an accounting order regarding the treatment of costs related to joining the Western EIM. This proposed order would simply grant the application for the accounting order that is requested by EPE. I'll just what's sought by EPE is the permission from the Commission to establish a regulatory asset for EPE's anticipated operation and maintenance expenditures for implementation of membership in the Western Energy Imbalance Market, or the EIM, which is operated by CAISO or CAISO, I'm going to pronounce that acronym. EP projects that joining the EIM will cost approximately $1 million. And EP states that it has conducted a cost-benefit analysis demonstrating that their New Mexico jurisdictional customer base is projected to experience a $3.5 million net benefit over the implementation period. And as you will recall, EPE is mostly as 80% of its customers are in Texas, 20% are in New Mexico. So that's the 20% portion of the cost. EP gives a description, and I've repeated that description of the EIM in my memo. I'm going to skip that because I think the commissioners are familiar with the EIM. I'll skip to the point where I talk about the how this came about. The EP is looking into joining a regional energy imbalance market. It was actually pursuant to the Commission's final order in docket number 19234 UT. It required EPE to conduct a cost-benefit analysis of joining a regional energy imbalance market, including an analysis of joining the EIM itself, this particular energy imbalance market. On April 13th of this year, EP filed a notice of study and intent to join the EIM in that docket. So this docket and this application are, of course, coming out of that decision. EP states that it has studied joining the EIM and intends to join it in the second quarter of 2023, and that to implement joining the EIM, EP has already filed an implementation agreement with FERC. That was in January of this year. EP states that on March 26th of this year, that agreement was accepted for filing. Under the implementation agreement that was accepted by FERC, now, my understanding is they say EP says it was accepted for filing. My understanding is that seems like more limited language than has been approved, but I'm not sure what the FERC's process is. Maybe that's all that's required. But EP states that under the implementation agreement, it must complete a variety of projected tasks necessary to prepare EPE for participation in the EIM, membership in the EIM, by April 5th of 2023, and the specified tasks require numerous system additions and upgrades, as well as an increase in EPE staffing. As I stated above, before, the cost-benefit analysis performed by EPE showed a net benefit to New Mexico customers of $3.5 million for the first 5 years. And apparently the cost benefit study was performed by EPE, but it was informed by a cost study by one contractor called Utilicast Corporation, showing that the total cost to EPE of joining EIM will be approximately 16.86 million. Now, again, that's the total cost. That's at I believe at 100% level. So if you're thinking that the math doesn't add up when we get to the cost benefit of $3.5 million, remember that's the jurisdictional portion for New Mexico. That's 20%. EP states that the initial study results project 2.65 million in ongoing operation and maintenance costs on a total company basis. And again, they're seeking $1 million. The creation of regulatory asset for a projected $1 million just with regard to New Mexico jurisdictional customers for the first 5 years. I think as I said, the cost benefit analysis included apparently this cost study performed by Utilicast Corporation, and then the benefit study was performed by Energy Environmental Economics, which showed gross benefits, that is, just the benefits without taking into account the additional costs of joining the EIM, from $3 million to $24.5 million on a total company basis, which is quite a range, but obviously, I would understand that to be influenced by such things as uncertainty as to the future with regard to the prices of various fuels for electricity, like as the commission is aware, one of the main purposes of the EIM is to make dispatching more efficient and to spread it over dispatching of energy more efficient and to spread it over larger regions, so that to assist in integrating more solar and more wind energy, more intermittent energy into the grid. With regard to the precedent that EP cites for this precise type of regulatory asset, EP cites the Commission's final order adopting recommended decision in docket number 18261 UT, which was P&M's request for a Commission order governing the accounting treatment of costs related to joining the same EIM. EP states that the Commission in that matter authorized P&M to create a regulatory asset account to record its implementation costs incurred to join the EIM, and EP states it's seeking a similar order in its application here. EP states in the application that's not seeking rate making treatment of the costs incurred at the time. EP in this application, EP states that it will seek all rate making treatment associated with any recorded costs, including carrying costs and the applicable amortization period for this asset in a future rate making proceeding. So this application merely seeks approval to begin recording a regulatory asset. In other words, an asset account on its books for the costs incurred in implementing EIM membership. The application is supported by direct testimony exhibits. I won't go into that detail. On July 19th, the city of Las Cruces filed a motion for leave to intervene, which was granted by operation of the commission's rule after 13 days. It was unopposed. And filed an initial response to the application. In the response, the city states that it does not oppose the commission's authorization of what the city refers to as a pure accounting order without notice to EP's customers and without a public hearing, which is what's requested by EP in its application. And the city says this would be consistent with previous PRC orders. The city states that it believes, however, that any order that would constitute prior approval of the company's decision to join the EIM or prior approval of any cost recovery associated with EP's participation in the EIM would be inappropriate without a full evidentiary hearing. The city, like EPE, cites the PNM accounting order case 18261 UT as the most relevant precedent. The city states that the final order in that matter, by incorporation of the RD, made certain limiting statements, which are actually recited by the city in its response. Those statements are that the order granting the accounting order does not in any way represent a finding that EP's expenditure of funds for the purpose of joining the EIM is reasonable and prudent. that it does not in any way create any presumption that any expenses included in the asset are reasonable, or that the utility is entitled to recover any of those costs in a future rate case. And that the standards for discretionary approval of cost recovery of costs, the cost appears to be redundant. There are two, there's some redundant language there. Incurred outside of the test period of a rate case through a regulatory asset comprises at minimum a requirement for clear showing that the project at issue will produce a net public benefit. The city states it would not oppose the commission's issuance of an order, again, without a hearing and notice to EP's ratepayers, if the order includes such statements. In addition, the city cites a case that was not cited by EPE, which is docket number 2069 UT, which concerns the commission's adoption of an emergency rule prohibiting discontinuation of residential public utility service during the time period of the governor's executive orders. In other words, the emergency rule, the order adopting emergency rule with regard to customer shutoffs during the COVID crisis. The city states that it would not oppose issues of an order granting the application if it includes additionally, in addition to those statements from the final order in the PNM case, these additional statements from 20-69 UT, that the order does not in any way create any presumption that any expenses included in the regulatory asset are reasonable, or that the utility is entitled to recover any of those costs in the future rate case. And there are two statements, and that consistent with the commission's prior practice, such authorization does not include any advance ruling regarding carrying costs and amortization periods for any regulatory asset. All determinations on the reasonableness of the costs and permissible scope of the expenses recorded as a regulatory asset will be deferred to such later proceeding, if any, in which recovery of such expenses through rates may be sought. So those are the two statements that the city would also have the commission add to any order that grants the application. The city, as I said, was the only intervener so far. There was no motion for intervention date. There has been no procedure except to that the city went ahead and filed this motion for leave to intervene and the initial response. So there have been no other filings but the application of those two filings. The order that I've drafted, the proposed order, would find that the commission should exercise its discretionary authority to issue an accounting order for EPE to create a regulatory asset, to record the expenses it incurs to join the EIM, and to preserve its ability to seek recovery in a future rate case of the costs it records in the asset. The proposed order would further find that the application should be granted with the same clarifications, limitations, and requirements as were included by the commission in its final order adopting recommended decision in docket number 18261 UT, that is the PNM order. The proposed order would note that EPE states that it seeks an order similar to the final order. That's quoting the language of the application itself, to the final order issued in that docket, and would find that the commission would find that the two matters are quite similar and should be treated as such. The proposed order would find that with regard to the city's response, the order satisfies the city's request to the extent that the city urges inclusion of the language incorporated into the final order in the PNM case. In fact, in the ordering paragraphs, I copy the language from the PNM, the RD in the PNM case, which was fully adopted by the commission. I think I even made just a further clarification to separate something out. You'll see in the ordering paragraphs, it not only says that this order does not constitute a decision on reasonableness of the cost, but I separated out also does not include a finding on the reasonableness of joining the EIM itself. So, which is of course related to the cost. So this order is essentially identical to the final order adopted in that matter. But as I said, the city also urges the commission to include additional language from docket 2069 UT. But that was the emergency rule order. But the proposed order would find that the additional language from that docket is redundant and unnecessary. I just read you those two statements, and the first one is almost identical to the statement, the statement or two statements put together that are already included in the order pursuant to following the example of the P&M order. The other one, the second statement is essentially the same too. It singles out carrying costs and amortization periods, but those are also referencing those are included in the costs that would be included in any. I think EP actually refers to those costs as applications as not being included in the asset itself. And in any event, if they were included in the asset itself, there's a statement that anything included in the asset is not being in the asset account is not being there's no rate making treatment that's being decided in the order. The order, so as I said, the ordering paragraphs have the same limiting clarifying language as the P&M in the P&M case. The big difference between this, if the commission adopted this order, the big difference between the two matters would be not in the outcome, but in the procedure. And with the P&M case, that went to a hearing examiner. I believe there was a hearing. There's a lot more procedure to get to this, to get basically to this stage. I feel that that procedure is not necessary because I think the proceeding in that case really led to a determination of what the order should include, what its limitations should be. And it seems completely, to me, to be completely applicable and transferable from that case to this case. So I've simply drafted an order that would do the same thing without the need for the intervening procedure. So hopefully it saves it. It does. It would save the commission staff and any potential parties, as well as EPE, a lot of time and effort, because I think we have our answer already. So I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Russell. Any questions for Russell regarding this proposed or potential order?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Hall.
So Russell, I was looking at the ordering paragraphs and I don't, let's see. It says the grant of the application is granted, the grant.
Commissioner Hall, can you just reference where you're at?
Yes, I'm in the ordering paragraphs. Paragraph A says the application is granted. B, I guess this is a question, Russell, is paragraph B the place where you're attempting to capture those principles that are, or those statements that are enumerated in those other two cases? It is, isn't it?
Right. Yes, Commissioner Hall, specifically, this language is coming from the P&M case. But as I said, the other case is referenced by, or the other docket is referenced by the city. Those statements were not identical to these statements, but they were almost identical to these statements. In other words, I felt they were captured within these statements. So yes.
I don't think it's as straightforward as it could be if you just repeated the language, because you don't repeat the language. You just say, the commission's grant of the application excludes determination of any rate making issues, but not limited, including but not limited to the following. And you say the proper sharing of implementation and ongoing EIM costs based upon the savings achieved and costs incurred in joining and participating. 2, the prudence and reasonableness of EPA's decision to join and the specific items of expense recorded in the regulatory asset. 3, whether EPE should be allowed to recover carrying charges. Okay, so 2 and 3 mention it, but you just say this order excludes determining those issues. Yeah, okay. I guess that's okay.
And I believe this entire paragraph copies the P&M order or the RD, which was adopted by the final order of P&M, word for word, except one even like additional like sort of breaking out of something to clarify even further that included, which I don't think actually was what I said. It was the prudence and reasonableness of the decision, because I think that was already in the language of the P&M decision. But essentially, this is the language of the P&M decision.
Okay. Okay. So, Mr. Chair, that's my only question, just looking at this language in the proposed order, and I think it's fine. So if there's no other, pending any other discussion, I would move to approve the order.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Hall. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
A second by Commissioner Byrd. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. Mike Smith, please record the vote.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar,
Aye.
Commissioner Maestas,
Aye.
Commissioner Byrd.
Aye.
Commissioner Hall.
Aye.
Order passes 4-0.
Thank you, Mike. Let's move on to item 9. This is regarding case 21-00098-UT in the matter of applications for 2022 broadband program support from the State Rural Universal Service Fund as per 17-11-10-31 of NMAC. And this is a discussion item regarding the potential need to issue a variance from the State Rural Universal Service Fund rule to extend the commission's deadline for a decision on the application beyond October 15th, as well as to determine an estimate of funding to begin determining grant recipient projects. I added this to the agenda, but Russell, do you want to tee this up, or would you like me to begin?
Mr. Chairman, I will just briefly tee it up. I think the commission will recall, because it was just last week, after the presentation of the broadband program awards or applications, I'm sorry, and pending in this year's application docket. I discussed, and I included detail of my memo for that presentation, that there's uncertainty at this time as to exactly how much money will be available for the broadband program applications within the SRUSF, within that $30 million cap, because there are 2 pending dockets that will impact the determination of other statutory burdens or statutory requirements of the fund. Let me say that, funding requirements of the fund. One of those is, of course, the access reduction support payments to the rural ILECs. That is something that may be determined even next week. That docket, which is because the docket concerning the calculates the possible change to the affordability benchmark rate, the residential affordability benchmark rate, as you recall, has an impact on the rural ILECs payments, access reduction support payments, through the calculation of imputed benchmark revenue. The final filings in that docket, or at least the final filings that were required by the commission's initial order, are due today. Those are the filings in which the rural ILECs were instructed to let the commission know to what level they would raise rates, if at all, in response to the commission's adoption of any of the increased rates that have been recommended in the comments that have been filed in the matter so far. Those are the 2 pieces of information we would need to know what the imputed benchmark revenue is. The affordability benchmark rate to be adopted by the commission, which we have recommendations on, and then what the response of the rural ILECs would be to any such increase, would they raise their rates to the full level or not. And we can know, like I said, the piece of information that we don't have is will be filed today, the rural ILECs response in terms of their intended rates in response to any of those potential changes. So that's something that will probably almost certainly be decided by the end of this month, which gives, that doc will probably not be will not present a difficulty in terms of meaning the October 15th deadline for the commission's dispositive decision on the applications as per the commission's rule. However, as you recall, the other docket that is pending, that's the docket for consideration of Sacred Wind's petition for support from the SRUSF. Because of the date upon which the petition was filed, which was July 29th, decision could be rendered as late November. The statute, which was changed to the Rural Telecommunications Act of New Mexico, this is a legislation that was passed, as you know, just this year, is a matter of first impression. So it's difficult to say exactly what that payment will be. I mean, that is the purpose of this proceeding. We have a 120-day statutory limit of time to make that determination, and that's a very short time period. So it is a very expedited matter already. So it didn't need to be expedited for the purpose of for this purpose for the SRUSF. And I would never recommend expediting more than 120 days for something that is really a matter of first impression and may require a hearing. As I said, that's pending before Bob Lennon. So the 120-day deadline for that is November 26th. So there could be uncertainty right up until that time, unless perhaps the parties in that matter, reach an early stipulation, and that stipulation is recommended for approval. That's the only possibility I see of learning what that number may be, much earlier than November 26th. So this morning I went ahead and forwarded to the commissioners. I know it was only shortly before the open meeting, but it's a very simple single signature order that's proposed by Commissioner Maestas that would issue a variance from the October 15th deadline for the commission to issue a dispositive order in this docket. But it has blanks for the actual extended deadline, as Commissioner Maestas is hoping to reach some consensus today on what that may be, what that deadline should be. And I can certainly give input on that. As I said, in last week's discussion, I said I don't have a clear answer on what the best path is right at this point. I think there are certainly, I do think this October 15th deadline will need to be extended, unless the commission wants to take the option of, after having found out the outcome of the docket, the affordability benchmark rate docket, of just leaving a very significant amount of room in the fund for the Sacred Wind payment, not knowing what that is. Because but that would, of course, cut into the amount available for broadband program applications, because it would mean, leaving a large amount of space, or however you would put it, a large amount of funding unavailable to the broadband program to make sure that there's enough for whatever that number in the Sacred Wind case turns out to be. Now, I did provide you, the commission, with information after last week's open meeting with regard to an estimate that was given by staff to the legislature in an FIR. And as I instructed the commission at that time, this information cannot be considered by the commission with regard to the petition, the final order, and the petition that's pending before Bob Lennon. This is outside of that docket. It was made by staff for the legislative purpose, but for purposes of estimating how much burden there may be on the fund, it's perfectly reasonable to consider it at this time. Unfortunately, the FIR, staff goes through the language of the bill which passed, and calculates a payment based on certain assumptions. The bill is designed to give Sacred Wind a payment that's comparable to what rural ILECs of about the same size are receiving access reduction support payments. But there's the language, because it's broad language, comparable, as I think used a couple of times, meant that staff stated that with its, they gave us a particular estimate and then say, given the uncertainty and the fact that this is a new bill and new language and fairly broad language, it could be up to 2.5 times that amount. And I think this morning, Isaac forwarded you the FIR, which I forwarded last week, just to remind the commission that that's an important part of this consideration. I'm just looking to see what that number was. Sorry, let me just open the FIR. I don't have that. Anyway, I'll turn it over to Commissioner Maestas. I was not recall this particular amount that was estimated by staff. I'm just going to take a look at that. In the meantime, I will turn it over to Commissioner Maestas for discussion.
Thanks, Russell. I'm not going to really reiterate anything you said. I think that's a good summary. From my perspective, based on what was before us in the previous meeting, we have a tall task here. We have almost $50 million in project requests, and with a realistic maximum amount of budget in the broadband program fund of 15 million. And I think we're dealing with potential wide fluctuations in the estimated cost of the set aside for Sacred Wind. And so what I think we should do is set the revised deadline through this variance to ensure that we comply with the deadline to act on Sacred Wind's petition, which was filed on July 29th. And that ultimate deadline is November 26th. And based on the 2 docket actions regarding establishing the benchmark and the Sacred Wind case before Bob Lennon, I would recommend that we reestablish or designate a revised deadline of November 24th. I understand we are going to meet. I think that's Thanksgiving week. I would say that's probably the latest that we can act, on these broadband program awards. And I want to hear, from Russell to see if that's going to work, if that we would have all the information needed and a firm budget in which to act. And the reason for me bringing this forward as well is I really think there needs to be an interim process of shortlisting the projects. We have established criteria, and I know that I was curious to see where these projects fell by PRC Commission District, but as I stated, have no desire to deviate from the established criteria. But I do feel like perhaps between now and the deadline, the revised deadline to act on these awards, that we either have staff or commissioner assistants pare the list down while applying the existing criteria, and that way we're not faced with a $50 million wish list and only a maximum of 15 million to award. So those are just kind of my thoughts on this. And so I'm willing to open it up to other commissioners. I guess what I'd like to discuss first is what a revised deadline would be appropriate. And maybe Russell, you can comment on what you think would be realistic. I did a pen and ink change in the proposed single signature order, paragraph 6, on or before November 24th of 2021 would be the revised deadline to act on the broadband program support. So with that, I'll open it up to the floor. But I'll let Russell, did you want to maybe talk about a recommended deadline first before we talk about any other actions that we may want to take on between now and then?
Yes, Commissioner Maestas, I think the November 24th deadline is good. I think because November 26th is the absolute 120-day date for final decision from the commission, it's very likely. Like I said, this case will probably need nearly the 4 months, but that is very nearly the 4 months. So hopefully we'll be able to have a decision on that by that date. Well, we'll on this decision on sacred wind matter, including the RD from Bob Lennon, or certification of stipulation if there's a stipulation, and a commission final order, I think could very realistically be done by that date. What this does is there's another constraint I haven't mentioned so far, which is the calculation of the next year's surcharge rate or per connection charge, which funds the fund, and the fund size, which typically the fund size is, according to our rule, calculated by adding up the various burdens on the fund, and knowing all of those burdens, including the broadband program application amount, the total application awards that were made. What I'm thinking, the implicit, there are actual deadlines in the rule for that, which let me look at the actual deadlines here. I just opened this up for our fund administrator to arrive at a recommendation for that per connection charge, which there are two aspects to the per connection charge. There's because it funds the fund, it takes the fund size. In other words, all the burdens on the fund, all the things that must be funded, including broadband program awards, the rural ILEC, access reduction support payments, et cetera, adds those together for what the total funding needs of the fund are, and then divides that by a count of the number of communication connections in the state of New Mexico, which is which is a term that's defined by the statute and included in our rule. That gives us the per communication connection or per connection charge that you see on your bill, which is a particular, I think right now it's at 88 cents, something around there. It's pretty low right now. Now, under the rule, under our SRUSF rule, I'm just looking at the part of the rule we need to look at here. 171110, oops, that's not it. Sorry, 17111019, annual, which is called annual determination of fund. And this was one of the things, the rule was sent by Isaac this morning. But again, these are, I understand that commissioners may not have had a chance to look at it, have this in front of them, but I'll just read to you from, or paraphrase from that section concerning how the fund is determined each year and the procedure for it. As you know, the SRUSF rule was amended this year. And one of the amendments to this portion of the rule was to give the fund administrator more time to submit its findings to the commission and for the commission to make its decision. The reason for that was in the old rule, I think we had something like 2 or 3 months built in after the determination of the commission's actual issuance of an order saying what the per connection charge would be, because in the past there was some concern that carriers, including the big wireless carriers who pay into the fund, not the companies that are receiving money, although they pay, their customers pay into the fund too. But
Chair, excuse me a minute.
Sorry,
Russell, could you please slow down a little bit and just go back over that start at the last sentence you started? I'm having trouble following you without something written in front of me. And
Commissioner Hall, I'm sorry, yes.
You're speaking fast and it's hard for me to catch all your words. I'm sorry.
No, you're absolutely right. For one thing, let me organize what I'm saying a little bit better. We have this constraint, the constraints when it comes to the commission determining the fund size and per connection charge for next year involve knowing what the burdens on the fund, the requirements of the fund, the funding requirements of the fund will be. And that's what we've been talking about in terms of, the amount that will be committed to broadband. Of course, we've been talking about in the context of what will be available within the $30 million cap for broadband, given the other the other burdens on the fund. But then, as I said, last year, for instance, all those burdens were known, added together, and determined the amount of funding, which was near $30 million, because the commission wanted to get as close to that $30 million cap as possible. And that was the fund size. And then the fund administrator takes that amount and divides it by the number of communication connections, which is something the commission doesn't have to do anything to determine. That's something that's collected by information collected by a fund administrator to come up with a per connection charge. And the larger point I was getting to was, in terms of time constraints, that is also a time constraint on this whole process of determining the different amounts within the fund and determining the per connection charge, because there is some time needed after the commission determines that per connection charge between that and the end of the year, so that the carriers paying into the fund, which is all the carriers who have any connections here in New Mexico, have time to change their billing. Because this is literally what the amount that you see on your bill under New Mexico SRUSF or Rural Service Fund or something like that, Universal Service Fund. They have to, update their billing. Now, as I said, this year we amended the SRUSF to recognize that it's not a huge amount of time that's needed. It's a month. So having a decision by
What day you say it's not a huge amount of time? So what did you say?
It's not a large amount of time that's needed by the carriers. As it turns out, we've learned that it's about a month.
Okay.
In the past, we've been told that it might be up to 3 months. And so like I said, we've learned that it's about a month. That seems to be more than adequate time for that billing change. So what I'm saying is, another constraint on the overall consideration of the size of the fund is that it should be decided by December 1st. And I'm told that we actually have an open meeting December 1st, so that will work. Now that determination is made in a separate docket, because this is just the broadband program docket, which will tell the fund administrator the amount of broadband program funding to include in its calculation of the overall fund size. The commission opened that other docket just today in the consent agenda. So what Commissioner Maestas has proposed for having a decision on the broadband program applications should work, because it should work in terms of the two different time constraints. It will allow the commission to have information to the fund administrator for a final decision as to what the surcharge for next year should be by December 1st. That gives a month for the change of billing. And it also, the other time constraint is coming from the other direction. That's the time constraint of, well, we won't know how much the broadband program application, how many the commission can grant without knowing the outcome of this Sacred Wind case, which will take probably up to about that time. Hopefully we'll have a final order the week before November 24th. It will be tight, but that's actually a perfect place, I think, to put that, November 24th. Now we'll have to, I would include in this order a variance then for the fund administrator, because the fund administrator, under our rule, the fund administrator is given almost that much time to do the determination, but not quite. The 17, 11, 10, 19 NMAC or SRUSF rule provides that the fund administrator will submit its findings as to the fund size and the per connection charge on or before November 10th. So we're looking at, that would have to be pushed off to sometime after November 24th, like between November 24th and December 1st. Now that doesn't seem like a lot of time, and I don't know, but that is, Commissioner Myers, you said that is after Thanksgiving, correct? November 24th is?
No, I think it's before Thanksgiving.
Okay. There might be, okay, I've just been told that we do not have an open meeting on November 24th.
Right.
So I think around that time makes sense. We might have to do it. We could choose a date a bit earlier, but then of course, I mean, this is very, very tight. We could choose the open meeting the week before. I don't know if that's going to be preempted by Thanksgiving or if maybe the November. I'm just looking at my calendar right now. I mean, to me, November 24th is a great date, but we don't have an open meeting that date. So the week before is November 17th. So I assume, yeah, November 24th that's the Thursday. That Thursday is, the 25th is Thanksgiving. So I guess I would say we could do November 17th. And hopefully the Sacred Wind case will be done by then, because this will, if we have that decision in time, the commission having issued a final order at that time, we'll know all of the other burdens on the fund other than the broadband program applications, and we'll be all set the commission will be all set to make a decision on November 17th, a fully informed decision, which will give the fund administrator plenty of time to submit its findings to the commission. We could put a deadline of I could add a deadline of 10 days from that date, or maybe a little bit more since there's Thanksgiving in the interim, so that the commission could, on December 1st, a date on which we do have an open meeting, submit its findings with regard to the fund size and per connection charge. So I know this is a lot. I just got a message from Michael saying having trouble following. I'm having trouble following, but I can clarify right now. There's so many, as you know, there are just a lot of constraints coming from different directions. But I think November 17th is a good date here because it is an open meeting date. It's before Thanksgiving. And like I said, it's quite possible that we'll have a final decision in the Sacred Wind petition case. And then the commission will be able to, on November 17th, decide what the total size of the awards will be, and can get as close to the $30 million cap as it can within whatever is left over in the fund. And then in the 2 weeks that follow, the fund administrator, which include Thanksgiving, the fund administrator can calculate the total fund size and per connection charge and submit recommendations to the commission for the commission to decide on December 1st what the fund will essentially probably approve the recommendation of the fund administrators to the fund size and per connection charge, so that the carriers who pay into the fund will have a month to change their billing. That will work perfectly. November 17th, I think, works. And then I would also include in this order, this is a single signature order that would be issued after the open meeting. This matter is only on for discussion, but this can be done by single signature order. I would have November 17th as the date to which the deadline for the commission is moved. And then the order would also include a variance from 17/11/10/19 for the fund administrators deadlines of their deadline of November 10th to submit their recommendation as to the surcharge, and then give the commission beyond November 20th to December 1st to decide to actually act on that recommendation. As long as we have a decision on Sacred Wind by November 17th, that will work perfectly. And if there's, we'll see how that goes. If it doesn't, we need to revisit that, but I think that would be perfect.
Russell?
Yes, Commissioner Vicente.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
Yes. I have an issue with Sacred Wind. Sacred Wind serves in Northwest New Mexico, and we have a pending investigation on Sacred Wind under an order of the PRC. I also have other concerns about Sacred Wind. Would you like to go over that, Russell?
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, I would advise you not to raise those concerns at this time. For one thing, the Sacred Wind matter is not on the docket. The only reason that I'm mentioning it is with regard to the scheduling, and we've discussed, as per the commission, as per the staff's FIR to the legislature, giving us sort of an idea of a very large range of amounts that might be, only for the determinant of plugging in a blank space and as to how much that might be with regard to the fund. So it's only been mentioned, not with regard to any of the merits of the petition or the merits of Sacred Wind, or this is not an evaluation of Sacred Wind or its petition. Plus, I would advise, that's not on the agenda today, and I would advise all commissioners not to express any opinions about Sacred Wind's petition at this time at all, because that is a matter that's still pending before Bob Lennon, and that record is still being developed.
Russell?
Yes, Commissioner Vicente.
You did not answer my question. my question is, there's a pending investigation. So how do we make decisions when there's a pending investigation?
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, I would say the pending investigation will not impact the amount of the payment I would rather not discuss neither the investigation or the petition is on the agenda today. So we should avoid speaking about those today at all. Again, the only thing I mentioned about the petition is that it's pending and that the outcome is uncertain and when the outcome might be, not about how it might be impacted by any other findings of the commission. I would have to discuss, and I can discuss with you after the open meeting, what the interaction of those two pending dockets, if any, might be. But the commission should not discuss this in the open meeting. It is, as I said, again, this actually does go to your question, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, because I'm saying, please do not discuss those issues here. I can discuss those with you as an attorney-client privilege communication outside of this open meeting, because they are not on the agenda. And even if on the agenda, with regard to the petition, it would be improper to discuss that while it's a pending matter with regard in any way that indicated any judgment on the petition, because the record is still open. But I'm happy to discuss that with you outside of this open meeting, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar.
All right, Russell, Commissioner Vicente Aguilar, let's move on to another subject. Do you have any objections to the proposed deadline to make broadband program fund application awards of November 17th, and to include an amendment in the single signature order to include a variance for the fund administrator to calculate the fund size? And of course, that deadline would be, as recommended by Russell, of December 1st of 2021. Any discussion or objection to those two issues?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve. Well, wait a minute. We don't have an order before us, do we? We're just
discussing. This is a discussion item. What I'm proposing is a single signature order that Russell had sent you.
Yes, I printed it out just now and was able to read through it while we were discussing, and that helped a lot. But we haven't, it's unfortunate we got it as late as we did.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner,
it does make sense.
I think I can clarify your concerns here.
No, that's okay, Russell. It's okay. I read it and I do get it. There's two things going on. One is the docket to consider the affordability benchmark rate that the fund administrator has to declare, I guess, and that apparently had a different deadline, I think of September 15th, but if we extend that to December 1st, that's fine with me. In my opinion.
May I interject? Because there's a to clarify.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I just want to clarify.
That's okay. Just talk slowly, please. It's really hard to follow when you say the important words really fast.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Commissioner Hall. I will slow down. No deadlines within either of those dockets are being the Sacred Wind petition docket or the affordability benchmark docket are being extended here today. I discussed those dockets only with regard to what their likely completion times are as they are now. They're not on the agenda to change any dates there. There really isn't much to change there. With regard to that September 15th, that's today deadline, what I was saying is that for the affordability benchmark rate case, today is the due date for certain filings, which I believe will be complete the filings that are needed according to the initial order in that case to give the commission the information it will need to make a final decision in that docket. I'm planning to bring it next week. So what I was that docket is almost certainly not going to interfere with would not interfere with the October 15th deadline for the commission to determine the amount of broadband program funding because it probably will be completed by the end of the month. But I mentioned it anyway in case it's not, in case it goes on or the commission wants more information.
Wait. I'm not following you now. It's going too fast. So now what are you? So that's fine. I understand. Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying that. So that won't be an issue. And then I understand in the other case, docket 21-193, in the matter of the petition of Sacred Wind for support from the State Rural Universal Service Fund, that order may be issued as late November, but you're saying that it's more likely that it will be issued sooner than late November. And then that's therefore why we would have the be able to bring it on November 17th, bring our decision on the pending applications by November 17th. Is that correct? Or is that December 1?
That's correct. Yeah, that is correct. And what I would say is, with regards to the November 17th, the November 17th open meeting would be the one at which, if the commission hadn't already made issued a final order with regard to Sacred Wind's petition, in a previous open meeting, it could be done at that open meeting. I'm not saying, I think it is probable the commission could do it by then. We'll have an RD and the exception period can be shortened and we'll be able to do it by then. I mean, again, I think they're going to need almost the full 120 days if it goes to hearing, but that is the full 100 I'm sorry. The full.
Wait a minute. Excuse me, Russell. Just hold on one second. Let's just follow along the path I'm going on.
Yes.
You're seeking, we want to do a variance today under a single signature order to give the commission additional time to issue a dispositive order concerning this year's applications.
Yes, and that would be the extension from October 15th to November 17th. And then along with that, the commission would be issuing in the same order a variance from the portion of the rule, this SRUSF rule, which is outside of the broadband program provisions, but it's within the general provisions of the rule that require the fund administrator to submit to the commission a recommendation as to next year's fund size and the per connection charge. The rule requires that by November 10th. They're not going to know until November 17th. And so I would set a deadline for that somewhere between November 17th and December 1st, because December 1st will be a date in this order to which the other deadline, there are 3 deadlines that we moved here. The other deadline, which is in the commission's rule says the fund administrator will submit its recommendation about the fund size and charge by November 10th, and the commission will issue its order on that recommendation, usually adopting it by November 20th. Those 2 dates would instead move to something like the commission's date would move to December 1st. And then the fund administrator we'd come up with a date somewhere in between November 17th and December 1st after Thanksgiving. I could determine that right now. We haven't determined that date, but it just has to be somewhere in there to give the fund administrator enough time after learning from the November 17th order, what all the final burden is with regard to broadband program. They'll have all their information. So I'll just set it. I can tell you right now. November 25th is I was gonna say Halloween, Thanksgiving. So I think we could give them until, I guess in the November 29th. I mean, that is only a weekend after, but it's a fairly easy calculation. And then we'd have it for the 2 days later, December 1st meeting. That's usually the December 1st open meeting. We'd have that information for the December 1st open meeting, and then they wouldn't have to try to file something.
I understand.
Yeah, before they.
Thank you very much, Russell. Mr. Chair, I have no problem with a single signature order. And that's all I have to say on this. I think Russell has it well in hand, and I think we're fine.
Yes, and I just want to clarify, Commissioner Hall, that's absolutely right. We don't need a vote on this. I think, usually single signature orders are not discussed by the whole commission, but I think Commissioner Myers just wanted to get consensus here. And so he probably, just an indication of where the commissioners stand on this, I think is satisfactory. There's no vote needed now. It can be done by single signature order, and it will be if the commission, if Commissioner Myers is satisfied that the other commissioners are on board.
I'm satisfied unless Commissioners Byrd or Vicente Aguilar disagree with this approach and these revised dates.
No, I like the 17th and 1st. They're fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Byrd.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I disagree. I will not be in favor for the reasons that I stated earlier. Thank you.
Okay, so Russell, if we don't have kind of a consensus on this, consensus is not a unanimous situation. I think you explained clearly that, any other matters are not germane to what we're discussing. Should I just fall back and propose this to the full commission for a vote in the form of a commission order? Or can I move forward with this single signature order with the agreed to modifications by most of the commissioners?
Mr. Chair, I think as a single signature order, if it's a procedural matter, I don't think you have to even ask anybody. If it's strictly procedural and general counsel advises it, I think you're probably fine.
Well, I was doing this to be transparent and make sure
I understand.
we all agreed on it, but Russell, go ahead and just respond to my question.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you may go ahead with the single signature order. Commissioner Hall is absolutely correct. Our rules of procedure, which were adopted by the commission, or by a previous commission, delegate authority for these sorts of things to any single commissioner. So no vote could be taken at this open meeting because it's not on for proposed action, but no vote is needed. No, you don't even need a majority, but it sounds like you have a majority acquiescing to the single signature order. You don't need that, but yes, you can go forward with it for those reasons. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Russell, and thank you everyone that participated in that. Let's move on to communications with the Chief of Staff. Wayne, take it away.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. It's nice to see you all. I don't have a lot of updates since we last met just a week ago, but do want to let the commission know that we are in the middle of audit season. Our annual audit is due to the Office of the State Auditor on November 1st. So that is certainly keeping our Administrative Services Division staff very busy, and we'll be providing updates further to you as we get more into that process, but did want you to know that we are in our FY21 financial audit is underway. Also, Mr. Chairman, we've had some discussions, kind of a follow-up to our FY23 appropriation request, which, as Commissioner Byrd noted, we have submitted to DFA and LFC, but we also will be proposing to the Commission some expanded budget adjustment authority for both this fiscal year and next fiscal year. And we'll also be proposing some to the Commission for your consideration, some special appropriations for both the current fiscal year to deal with our anticipated shortfall, but also for FY23 to deal with some anticipated needs there as well that will be above our FY23 baseline request. We've had some discussions about that with division directors, probably give that another week or so, and then before we bring it to the Commission for you to review, and then that's at an appropriate time to actually vote on. And with that, Mr. Chairman, happy to answer any questions that you or other commissioners have.
Any questions for Wayne? Going once, twice. All right. Thank you, Wayne.
You got a long day.
Let's move on to communications with General Counsel Mike and or any other staff members with OGC.
Mr. Chairman, I think I just heard somebody's voice in the background, but I just want to let you know, I am not going to be here for the meeting for next week. I'll be out next week. But as usual, Judy and Russell are available if commissioners have issues that come up during that time. Judy, I don't know if that was your voice I heard. Maybe not. Okay. So that's it.
Any questions for Mike? Going once, twice. All right. He's off the hook. All right. Communications with commissioners. Any commissioners that wish to make any statements?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Byrd.
Thank you. Just an update on the ambulance service. Mr. Prop sent out an email on the 10th, September 10th. I believe everybody received. It was a document created by Miss Casey Dunn, kind of outlining the issues with the ambulance service, problems we have, suggested fixes to that. The next step, Senator Woods would like to meet with our staff, kind of go over those issues, but I wanted to make sure that my fellow commissioners have at least reviewed it and are comfortable moving forward with those proposed changes. So if I could just get, or if let our chief of staff know that you're good with it, or if you have some questions. And then once I get an okay from him, I will set up a meeting between our staff and Senator Woods.
Commissioner Byrd, what date was that sent out?
September 10th, or at least
Oh,
that's when I received it.
okay. Well, I'm sorry. I must have missed it, so I'll look at it right away.
That's okay. Yeah, just look over it and read through it, see if you got any questions or answers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Commissioner Byrd?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners?
No.
Commissioner Vicente Aguilar?
No comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I had just a few matters I wanted to bring up. And maybe this first one's for you, Michael Smith. What's the status of the Facebook Center or Facebook Data Center renewable energy project? I know that we approved kind of a partial, it was like a proven of a part of the project. We kind of changed up the battery storage portion of that. Has P&M decided to go forward and break ground on it? Or does anyone know the status of that project that came before us?
Mr. Chairman, my understanding just from the perspective of General Counsel's office is that the commission essentially put the ball back in P&M's court.
Mike, I could interject here.
Sure.
So you know that we approved a 50 megawatt capacity for the solar. So, and then we disapproved the proposed addendum. So Mike is correct. If the parties are proposing to modify the special services contract, they haven't filed anything with us about that. But they, as far as General Counsel knows, they haven't filed an application to approve any new amendment to the special services contract. And staff would be best suited to answer whether or not they began construction of the parts of the application that the commission did approve.
Are there any staff members that can maybe comment on that? It's not pressing. I'm just curious just to see it because I haven't heard anything. And I was in Los Lunas last week and I saw a lot of construction cranes near the Facebook data center, but I think it was from the actual facility expansion, and I was unsure whether it was the actual renewable energy project, which is, I guess, is not on site. It's elsewhere. But if anyone could just let me know via email what the status is, that'd be great.
Commissioner, this is Brad Borman. I don't know that anybody else from staff is here, but I'm here. I am unaware of any construction or any beginning of construction that has taken place on the project, but we can take a look and see what information we can find out.
Thank you, Brad. Yes, go ahead.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you. My next issue, and maybe this is another Mike Smith issue. I read somewhere that FERC had taken action regarding Tri-State, and it was a request of Tri-State to clarify their electric co-op membership termination process and cost. Apparently, it's very vague and ambiguous. And I know that Kit Carson Electric Co-op, which was a member of Tri-State, did have to pay quite a bit of money to exit Tri-State as a member. And I was wondering if Office of General Counsel is familiar with this FERC action, because I've heard, and I've never confirmed it, but there are other existing members of Tri-State in New Mexico, rural electric co-ops, that wish to exit and cease membership from Tri-State, but they're having a lot of frustrations in terms of having a clarified process and a cost. So Mike, is this something we should be concerned about? I realize, the oversight and regulation by this agency over Tri-State is still a legal issue and hasn't been determined, but should this agency be concerned or at least track this FERC action with respect to Tri-State as it potentially impacts our rural electric co-ops, particularly the Tri-State members that want to exit Tri-State?
Mr. Chairman, I'm familiar with the Tri-State issues in which they were attempting to gain exclusive jurisdiction under FERC. I'm not familiar with the ruling that you're talking about with regard to the exit costs, but I can certainly familiarize myself with that.
That'd be great, Mike. If you could maybe research that and come back. Well, you're not going to be here next week. Maybe if you can research it and hand it over to Judy, and maybe Judy can give us a briefing on it next week.
Sure.
Thank you. The last thing yes, Commissioner Hall.
I just want to say, the cost of exiting Tri-State has been an issue for quite some time, as it's, I think, somewhat of a moving target. And I think it is something that we should be aware of and track, because it certainly does impinge on some of the co-ops who are interested in separating from Tri-State. And I think it's definitely something we should keep track of and be aware of. And so that's my opinion on that issue. And while I've got the floor, I also wanted to mention, I checked through my emails September 10th. And I don't have anything from Wayne. Wayne, could you send that email to me, please, that you send out to everybody else? Or Jeff, if you could forward it. Either way, I'd just like to get that email that I guess the other commissioners got that I didn't get, that we were just discussing. Either one of you guys there?
I can
look.
Okay, super. I don't know why it's not in my email, but it's not. So thanks.
The last thing I wanted to mention is that the Chief of Staff, Rebecca Avisha, Chief of Staff of Senator Heinrich's office, will be in town on Friday.
Yeah.
And she's meeting with individual commissioners. She'll be meeting with me, is it 3:30, Christopher? At 3:30 on Friday afternoon. I asked Wayne to maybe pop in, but I did ask the Chief of Staff's assistant if there are any specific staff members or commissioners that should at least sit in on my meeting, and I was told that no, but I think it's wise for Wayne to stop in and say hello. Commissioner Hall, I believe she's meeting with you as well, right?
Correct, at 4:30. So that might not be a bad idea. I might discuss that with Wayne myself.
And I guess the subject is, I believe, is going to be community solar. And I guess I should just give you all an update too. As you know, I stated a desire several months ago to pursue getting another solar innovator fellow assigned to our agency. Typically, Department of Energy and Oak Ridge actually manages a solar innovator program. Their rule was that they only provide one fellow to each state, but my office coordinated with Senator Heinrich's office, and we're on the precipice, on the brink of perhaps bringing on another fellow. We have an applicant that will be interviewed very soon. I'm not going to go any further in disclosing information until it's a done deal, but it looks very promising. And so we'll probably be discussing the Solar Innovator Program as well on Friday. That's all I had. Does anyone else have any other parting issues? Any other commissioners?
Mr. Chair, just
Yes,
real quick.
Yes.
I hate to ask, but who is Christopher Hall in the PRC?
He's my brother.
Well, anyway, Commissioner Hall did not receive that email. It went to a Christopher Hall. So anyway, I forwarded it to you. You should be able to review it now.
Thank you very much.
That was it, Mr. Chair.
Easy mistake. All right, then if there are no
Absolutely.
other matters, we are adjourned. Thank you all, and thank you for your understanding the technical issues that we had at the outset of the meeting. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Oh man, you have no idea.
Yeah, we know you got it tough there, Jeff. I know. Okay.
It wouldn't even, I kept getting into an empty room.
Oh, that's lonely.
Yeah, all my friends.
Yeah, where is it?
See you later.
Bye-bye.